Brighton's seafront has been attracting tourists for well over 200 years. Naturally, it has seen many changes and many novelties. The remains of perhaps the most unusual of these novelties can be found just where these girls are walking. It is unlikely that they realise the secret the rock pools have camouflaged. Occasionally it is possible to find objects that don't seem to go with their surroundings. To explain this mystery, we must go back to the end of the last century, when Magnus Folk lived and worked in Brighton, and created a most unusual form of transport. Magnus Folk's invention, nicknamed the Daddy Longlegs, was a kind of tram that ran in the sea. These concrete blocks supported the 4 rails necessary to carry the tram, the total width of the outermost rails being no less than 18 feet. The tram's official name was Pioneer. It weighed 40 tons, could carry 150 passengers, and travelled at about 5 miles per hour at high tide, 8 miles per hour at low tide. At high tide, the sea sometimes reached 16 feet up Pioneer's 23-foot legs. The great novelty of Daddy Longlegs was its attraction of a sea voyage without seasickness. This brought in many passengers, paying 6pence each way for the 2 3/4 mile journey from Brighton to Rottingdean. For the Board of Trade inspection in September 1896, the car was run through 15 feet of water in a stiffish wind. It was also required to run at low water so that various obstacles could be placed on the tracks. These were all easily pushed aside. The inspector was also shown the telephone fitted to the car to summon marine assistance in an emergency. The deck was 50 foot long by 33 foot wide. On the deck was this large saloon with design features reminding the passengers of its maritime, railway and tramway origins. Plants and flowers were set between the seat backs. Some of the windows had railway type blinds and straps, but on the seaward side there were heavy curtains. There was carpet on the floor and a small electric chandelier hung from the ceiling. Encircling both decks you can see ship's rails and lifebelts. There was also a lifeboat, but there hardly seems room for 150 people. Power was taken from this overhead line, and electricity from a steam-driven power station under the Rottingdean landing stage. The railway opened on Saturday the 28th of November 1896. The Mayor and Mayoress of Brighton were taken on the inaugural run, the journey to Rottingdean taking just over half an hour. It is still possible to find traces of the posts that carried the overhead power lines, despite 80 years of pounding by the sea. All that remains of the track are a few solitary bolts. After public service began in November 1896, there were only a few days of running before disaster struck. On the night of December the 4th, and again on the following night, Brighton was lashed by storms of great severity. The old chain pier, which was in rather a shaky state, was finally dashed to pieces. The Pioneer was roped to the pier at Rottingdean, but she broke away, ran some distance down the line and capsized. The line was so badly damaged that it could not be reopened for over 7 months. On Sunday, February the 20th, 1898, the Prince of Wales, Edward VII, travelled on Pioneer in the company of the Duke and Duchess of Fife. A plaque to commemorate this was placed in the saloon. Sadly, the Daddy Longlegs had to close after just 4 years. Brighton Council wanted to build groins out to sea to protect the cliffs from erosion. There was no way in which the track could be carried past these groins. As small compensation, Volk was given permission to extend his original railway, which still survives today. As late as 1909, Pioneer stood in the sea, roped to the intermediate landing stage at Rottingdean Gap. Eventually the tracks, piers and car were dismantled and removed by scrap merchants. The strange Daddy Longlegs was once very well described as being like a bit of pier slowly escaping. We shall probably never see its like again.